Let me ask you something. How many times have you bent over backward, stayed available, answered every message, showed up every time, only to be met with silence or half effort? Here's the truth. Sometimes the most powerful move isn't doing more, it's doing nothing. Act like he doesn't exist, not to play games, but to protect your energy, reclaim your value, and remind both of you what life feels like without your presence. Because trust me, when you stop showing up, the right people start noticing what they took for granted. When someone starts to take you for granted, the most effective thing you can do isn't to beg for their attention, over-explain yourself, or try harder to prove your worth. It's to pull away, not in a manipulative or cold way, but with calm clarity, by simply removing your energy from the situation. Why? Because scarcity creates value. The more available you are, the more someone may subconsciously begin to believe that your presence is a given, not a gift. We're all wired this way to some degree, to truly feel the importance of something only when it's no longer right in front of us. Think about it. When something is constant, it blends into the background. When it's suddenly missing, we notice. Your consistent presence, your emotional availability, your effort, all of it can become invisible to someone who hasn't earned it or stopped appreciating it. The moment you stop showing up, it creates space. And in that space, they're forced to feel the contrast between when you were there and when you're not. That's what ignites realization. That's what triggers reflection. You don't need to announce your withdrawal. You don't need a big dramatic speech. Just stop showing up where you're not being met. Stop filling in the emotional gaps they've left. When you act like he doesn't exist, meaning you detach emotionally, stop orbiting around his potential, and live fully in your own world, you begin to shift the dynamic. Suddenly, your presence is no longer a passive comfort. It becomes a noticeable absence. And this isn't about revenge or playing hard to get. This is about restoring your value in the equation. When you're always available to someone, they stop being curious. They stop reaching out. They stop wondering how you're doing because you've conditioned them to expect that you'll always be there. But when you create space, you invite them to step forward. You allow them to take initiative or not. Either way, you get clarity. People feel the difference when your energy disappears. They might not realize what they had until the calls stop, the check-ins stop, the emotional safety net vanishes. At first, they might not notice, but give it time. That silence begins to echo. They start scrolling through old messages, wondering why it suddenly feels quieter. That's when your absence speaks louder than anything you could have said. And that's when they either rise to meet you or reveal that they never intended to. This approach also protects you. When you stop feeding energy into someone who isn't reciprocating, you begin to refill your own cup. You redirect that emotional investment back into your own life, your friends, your passions, your peace. You stop fighting for scraps of attention and start creating space for people who want to show up without prompting. You remind yourself that love isn't earned through effort alone. It's experienced through mutual respect, reciprocity, and recognition. So if someone is taking you for granted, or giving you breadcrumbs, or leaving you feeling unsure, stop. Not to punish them, not to manipulate an outcome, but to create space for the truth to emerge. Let them feel your absence. Let them sit with the silence. If they miss you, they'll come looking. If they don't, they were never really there in the first place. Either way, you win. Because you chose yourself. There's a powerful shift that happens the moment you stop chasing and start choosing. It's subtle, but everything changes. How you carry yourself, how people respond to you, and most importantly, how you feel about yourself. Chasing someone often comes from a place of anxiety or fear. Fear that if you don't initiate, nothing will happen. Fear that if you don't keep showing up, you'll be forgotten. But when you chase, you're putting someone on a pedestal they haven't necessarily earned. You're handing them all the power in the dynamic, silently saying, You're the prize. I just hope you pick me. But that's not how self-worth works. That's not how connection works. When you're operating from a place of high value, you don't chase, you choose, you observe. You allow someone's behavior to show you whether they're worth your time, your energy, your heart. You're not sitting around waiting for them to text, analyze every word they say, or mold yourself into who you think they want. You're grounded in the belief that what you bring to the table is rare, and you're not going to serve it to someone who doesn't appreciate it. Choosing means knowing that you get to decide whether someone fits into your life, not the other way around. It means understanding that compatibility is a mutual process, not a performance. When you act like he doesn't exist, you're not being petty or immature. You're taking a step back to see the full picture without emotional fog. You're refusing to romanticize someone based on potential or fantasy. You're asking the question, does this person consistently show up? Do they pursue me in a meaningful way? Do they make me feel seen, respected, and secure? If the answer is no, your silence becomes your answer too. Because the more you chase someone who's not choosing you, the more you abandon yourself. You start ignoring your needs, your standards, your intuition. You teach yourself that attention, even if it's inconsistent or lukewarm, is better than nothing. But that's not love. That's attachment. That's fear dressed up as effort. And it leads to resentment, burnout, and a broken sense of self. When you choose instead of chase, you naturally create space for the right people to step in. People who don't need to be convinced of your value. People who want to be there, who match your energy, and who appreciate the person you already are, not someone you had to become just to get their attention. That's the kind of connection that's sustainable. That's the kind of love that grows. So if you're in a situation where you're doing all the work, constantly initiating, constantly giving the benefit of the doubt, stop. Let the dynamic breathe. Give it space. Allow them to come toward you, not because you pressured them, but because they genuinely want to. And if they don't, that's your clarity. That's your sign that you were never in the right place to begin with. You don't have to chase something real. What's meant for you doesn't require constant persuasion. You don't have to fight for someone who wants to stay. And when you shift from chasing to choosing, you send a clear message: I know what I bring. I know my worth. I'm not here to be tolerated. I'm here to be treasured. That mindset changes everything. It changes how you show up, how you speak, and what you're willing to walk away from. And ultimately, it leads you to the kind of relationship where you don't have to lose yourself just to be loved. Every interaction you have with someone costs you something, emotionally, mentally, energetically. And the truth is, your energy is your currency. You might not see it, but every time you overthink a text, replay a conversation, wait anxiously for a reply, or bend your schedule around someone who isn't doing the same for you, you're spending that currency. The problem isn't that you care, it's that you're investing in a place that gives you no return. And just like money, if you keep spending without receiving anything of value back, you'll end up depleted. We often convince ourselves that if we just give more, love harder, prove our loyalty, they'll eventually see our worth. But that belief keeps us locked in cycles of over-giving and under-receiving. You become emotionally bankrupt chasing after someone who's emotionally unavailable. And the worst part, they get used to it. They get comfortable with your effort, your presence, your constant availability. It stops feeling special to them because you're always there, always trying, always giving, even when they're not. This is where emotional boundaries come in. If someone isn't matching your energy, if they're consistently giving you crumbs or hot and cold attention, you have to stop pouring your energy into them. Not because you're trying to punish them, but because you're finally choosing to value yourself. You're choosing to conserve your emotional currency for people who actually see and reciprocate it. When you stop giving to someone who isn't giving back, You start to rebuild your emotional reserves. You get clearer, calmer, more grounded. You begin to see things as they are, not as you hope they will be. A lot of people mistake this pullback for being cold or detached, but it's the opposite. It's clarity. It's emotional responsibility. It's recognizing that no matter how much potential someone has, it's not your job to carry the relationship alone. Love, connection, partnership, it all has to be mutual. If you're constantly wondering where you stand, feeling anxious, or trying to decode someone's mixed signals, then something's off. Real connection feels safe, consistent, and reciprocated. You don't have to work overtime to hold on to it. The shift begins when you start noticing where your energy goes. Who gets your attention? Who do you give your emotional labor to? Who do you keep trying to fix, understand, or rescue? If the answer is someone who makes you feel uncertain more than they make you feel seen, that's a signal. That's your gut telling you this isn't balance, it's emotional debt. When you take your energy back, you make room for people who want to meet you halfway. You stop negotiating your worth with someone who doesn't even know what they're holding. You reclaim your emotional space, and with that comes a quiet power. You stop reacting to breadcrumbs. You stop settling for halfway effort. You start expecting more, not because you're demanding, but because you've finally realized you're worth more than the bare minimum. This isn't about ego. It's about alignment. When someone wants to be in your life, they won't make you guess. They won't let you carry the whole emotional weight. They'll show up. But they can't do that if you're filling in every gap they leave behind. So let those gaps exist. Let the silence speak. Let your absence reveal what your presence was really worth. Because sometimes the only way for someone to feel your value is to feel the space you leave behind when you stop giving it away so freely. When you're always available to someone, always responding immediately, always saying yes, always showing up without hesitation, you risk becoming predictable. And predictability, while comforting in some situations, can also dull attraction, especially in the early stages of a connection. What many people don't realize is that mystery is not about playing games or being secretive for the sake of it. It's about having a full life that doesn't revolve around one person. It's about allowing space between interactions so curiosity can build. When you're constantly accessible, you remove the natural tension and wonder that often fuels desire. Attraction is fueled by contrast, presence and absence, certainty and a little uncertainty, knowing someone and wanting to know more. If someone always knows exactly what you're doing, where you are, how you're feeling, and that you'll always be there, when they reach out, the dynamic becomes flat. There's no sense of discovery left. You've handed everything over on a silver platter before they've even decided if they're truly interested. And unfortunately, when someone doesn't have to earn your attention, they stop valuing it. Now, this isn't about withholding yourself to manipulate someone into wanting you. It's about remembering that you are already whole. You have your own goals, your own passions, your own joy that exists outside of anyone else. When you act like he doesn't exist, what you're really doing is returning your focus to yourself. You're no longer orbiting around his life, you're fully living yours. And when someone sees that, they start to wonder about you again. They start to notice the absence of your energy and effort. That curiosity can be a powerful thing. It shifts the dynamic from you chasing him to him realizing your value on his own. This doesn't mean disappearing entirely or ignoring someone as a strategy. It means not making them the center of your world when they haven't earned that place. It means not updating them on your every move, not initiating every conversation, not seeking validation in how they respond. Instead, you move through your day with confidence, knowing that the right people will come closer when they sense you're not trying to pull them in. People are naturally drawn to what they can't quite figure out, what they don't fully have access to. That doesn't mean being distant or emotionally unavailable. It means being selective with your energy. When you live with that energy, you show that your life is full, with or without him. That your happiness isn't dependent on his attention. That you're not waiting by the phone or overanalyzing every interaction. That kind of self-sufficiency is magnetic. It's not cold, it's powerful. And it subtly communicates that if he wants a deeper connection with you, he'll have to step into your world, not just expect you to keep stepping into his. The truth is, when someone feels like they already have you, without having done anything to earn it, they take you for granted. But when you show restraint, not out of fear, but out of respect for yourself, you reset the balance. You remind them that your time, your attention, your emotional presence are things to be appreciated, not assumed. And if they don't rise to meet you, if they don't show interest beyond the surface level, you've protected yourself from investing further in the wrong person. Mystery isn't about creating confusion, it's about creating space. Space for attraction to grow. Space for someone to wonder what's going on in your world. Space for you to be more than just an emotional caregiver or convenience. And that space might just be what finally allows the right connection. Emotional sobriety is one of the most underrated forms of power in any relationship. It's the ability to take a step back, regulate your emotions, and see things for what they are instead of what you want them to be. When you act like he doesn't exist, not from a place of anger, but from a place of clarity, you're choosing peace over chaos, self-respect over desperation, and truth over fantasy. That's what emotional sobriety looks like. It's the moment you stop trying to convince someone of your worth and instead decide to honor it yourself. It's easy to get caught up in the highs and lows of a connection, especially when someone gives you just enough to keep you hopeful, but not enough to feel secure. You start living for those occasional moments of attention, interpreting mixed signals as signs of interest, and overanalyzing silence like it holds some secret meaning. It becomes an emotional roller coaster that leaves you drained and confused, questioning yourself more than you question their inconsistent behavior. This is where emotional sobriety becomes your anchor. Instead of reacting from that place of anxiety or need, you choose stillness. You stop reaching out just to feel seen. You stop arguing your worth or trying to explain what you bring to the table. You stop chasing clarity from someone who has repeatedly shown you they're not willing to give it. You begin to realize that peace is more valuable than being chosen by someone who doesn't see your value clearly. Acting like he doesn't exist doesn't mean you've stopped caring. It means you've stopped allowing your emotions to dictate your decisions. It means you've chosen truth over attachment. Sometimes, detaching is the most loving thing you can do for yourself. When you remove your energy, your presence, your emotional investment from someone who isn't reciprocating it, you create space to come back to yourself. You begin to see how much time you spent hoping, trying, waiting, explaining, and how little it actually changed the outcome. You realize that no amount of effort can replace what's missing when someone isn't ready, willing, or capable of showing up for you. This emotional sobriety isn't coldness, it's strength. It's knowing you're allowed to walk away from things that make you question your worth. It's reminding yourself that you don't have to beg for love, loyalty, or consistency. It's understanding that someone who truly values you will not leave you feeling confused. They will not need to be convinced. They will show up clearly and consistently without you having to perform emotional gymnastics just to be noticed. When you reach this place, you stop making excuses for other people's behavior. You stop telling yourself stories to fill in the gaps. You let silence speak for itself. You let distance reveal what words couldn't. And in doing so, you step into a version of yourself that no longer needs to be validated by someone who was never fully present. You realize that protecting your peace is far more valuable than preserving a connection built on uncertainty. This inner calm becomes your compass. You're no longer acting out of impulse or fear of losing someone. You're grounded. And that energy is powerful. It radiates in everything you do. People can feel the shift. They sense that you're no longer dependent on their validation. And ironically, that's often when they start to take notice. But by then, your priorities have changed. You're not looking for someone to choose you. You're looking for someone who's already sure. Emotional sobriety is the quiet decision to stop letting chaos define your connections, to choose peace, truth, and clarity, even if it means walking away. That's not weakness. That's self-respect. That's power. Absence is one of the most powerful tools for clarity in any relationship. When you step back, you allow the space for truth to surface. Truth about how much someone values you, how much they were relying on your presence without appreciating it, and whether they're willing to meet you halfway when you're no longer making it easy. The sixth keynote, your absence is the test, is a reminder that sometimes the only way to truly understand where you stand with someone is to stop showing up for them and see what happens. When you're constantly available, always initiating, always keeping the connection alive, you never really get to see what the other person would do if you stopped. You're doing all the emotional labor, carrying both sides of the relationship. That might come from a good place, love, care, hope, but it also clouds reality. It prevents you from knowing whether that person is genuinely invested or just comfortable receiving your energy without giving anything in return. The moment you withdraw that energy, everything becomes clearer. The people who value you will feel the shift. They'll notice the quiet, the space, the lack of your usual presence. And if they care, they'll respond. They'll reach out. They'll make an effort. Not because you forced them to, but because they realize something meaningful is missing. That's the test. Your absence allows them to show you their truth. Are they willing to step in when you step back? Or were they only ever there because you made it easy? On the other hand, if your absence is met with silence, if the distance is never questioned, if they simply move on without hesitation, that's your answer too. As painful as it might be, it gives you clarity. You're no longer stuck in limbo, wondering where you stand. The test has already been run, and the result is in. Sometimes the lack of a reaction is the loudest answer you'll ever get. And while that truth might hurt, it's also freeing. Because now, you're not stuck in false hope anymore. You're not pouring yourself into a one-sided situation. You're done guessing. What makes this approach so powerful is that it's not about revenge or manipulation. It's not about making someone miss you just so you can feel important. It's about stepping away with grace to protect your peace and find clarity. If someone truly values you, your absence won't go unnoticed. It will create a gap that only your unique presence could fill. If they don't feel it, then they were never truly connected in the first place. In any relationship, there comes a moment when you have to let go of trying to control the outcome. You have to allow things to unfold naturally and see what remains when you're no longer the one holding it all together. That's when you discover who's willing to put in the effort, who truly cares, and who was just comfortable with what you gave. It's not an easy test, but it's a necessary one. Your absence becomes a mirror. It reflects not only their intentions, but your own patterns. It shows you how often you've overextended yourself and how much you've tolerated just to keep someone in your life. Stepping back is not weakness, it's wisdom. It's saying, I've done my part. Now let's see if you're willing to do yours. And whatever the result is, you'll walk away with something invaluable: self-respect. You'll know that you didn't beg, force, or plead. You simply allowed the truth to reveal itself. And in relationships, that's everything. Because real connection doesn't need to be chased. It survives the silence, and it answers the absence with presence. At the end of the day, your presence is a privilege, not a guarantee. When you stop pouring your energy into someone who doesn't match it, you reclaim your worth without saying a word. This isn't about playing games, going cold, or pretending you don't care. It's about honoring yourself enough to let silence do what your words no longer need to. Acting like he doesn't exist doesn't mean you're bitter. It means you've finally chosen peace over chaos, clarity over confusion, and self-respect over unreciprocated effort. And the beauty of your absence. It reveals everything: who's truly there, who never was, and most importantly, who you become when you stop begging to be seen. Let him feel your absence. Because that's where your power lives, not in proving your worth to someone else, but in remembering it for yourself.